think that me and you are pretty much in agreement when we say this is a weird podcast because Haney versus Lomachenko just happened, and we want to be excited because that fight was phenomenal. But then at the same time, like, there was some funky business going on with some of those scorecards that you just can't defend. Like, I'll start off with transparency, but
the thing is, like,
wait, before we get, I'm gonna say, like, let me get the housekeeping and then we'll get into it.
Yeah.
So just in case anybody missed it, Devin Haney fought Vasily Lomachenko for his lightweight title. Well, Haney's the champion. I said that weird, but Devin Haney retained his title. He beat Lomachenko by unanimous decision, 2 115 113s, and then 116 112. And I think, as we're about to get into, the 116 112 has got to be one of the craziest, like, cards I've seen in a while. Like, I personally had it 115 113 for Lomachenko, but I was like, I know it was a close fight. Those early rounds were tough to score, so it's like I could see the scenario, like, where people have Haney winning, but 8 rounds, no way, man. Like, no way. You could argue that Lomachenko won, like, the last 6. I don't understand how you could give Haney 8 rounds. Like, it's not his fault, because he's not judging the fight. Like, I don't like when that happens, like when it's a robbery, when people start to shit on the fighter for it, because, like, Devin Haney wasn't sitting at ringside scoring it. Like, I just think that boxing has such a serious problem with this at this point, because, like, last week we were just talking about it before the pod, like Romero versus Barroso. You know, Barroso drops Rolly Romero, and then Romero kind of comes back, stuns him real quick, and the ref immediately steps in because Romero's the guy that, like, the promotion probably wants to win. And you just robbed Ismael Barroso of, like, an opportunity at, like, millions of dollars in championship fights. And then, you know, back to this one, and I'll get, like, to your thoughts in a second. But, like, now we have Lomachenko, who's been a champion before and is a legend of the sport. So it's, like, a little bit easier to stomach. But then when you see him in the locker room after, just sobbing that, like, because you see how much it means to him. And to fight your ass off the way that he did in those championship rounds, and to have most of the world thinking you won that fight, and that's just all the work that you put in. It's got to be awful. But I'll let you go. What did you think about this? And I'll just kind of go from there. There's a lot of places we can go with this, you know.
Yeah, I agree, but, you know, at the same time, I mean, like, when you were, as you were doing the intro, immediately I felt like, you know, as much as, like, the thing is, like, you know, as much as we could talk about the fight itself first, obviously, and then, all right, you know, just, you know, build up to what actually, you know, is the big controversial thing here. But, you know, what's the point? Like, when everybody knows, it's no secret, everybody saw it, everybody watched the fight, like, this is the big thing clouding the entire fight itself. Like, it's just, I think it really is just that 116, 112.
Yeah. Because, like, you could explain 7 rounds to 5 for Haney, because those early rounds were close. Like, I wouldn't fault anybody if they scored any of those first 4 for either guy.
I don't think this would not be nearly as bad if this wasn't a freaking unanimous decision. 116, 112.
And then that same guy,
like, come on,
Dave Moretti, who's the judge who gave the 116.
Excuse that,
dude, he gave round 10 to Haney too, and I'm like, how do you give Haney round 10? It's because, like, for anybody who didn't watch the fight, the first 4 rounds were pretty close. 5, 6 seemed to be like when Loma was starting to pick up some momentum, and then after that, it just seemed,
you know, man, like, one thing you gotta think about is, like, how many people that, because, like, I don't know, you know, we don't really look into freaking pay-per-view numbers and stuff and ratings and all that, and how many people are watching and all that, but obviously,
you never
a big
know what's
money,
true.
big marquee fight like this, like, you know, you'd have to think one way or another. There's a lot of people probably watching, like, one of their very first boxing matches, and even they could tell you, like, oh, it looks like the Loma guy probably
the Loma guy.
He probably got that done. It looked up a little more decisive and stuff. You could clearly, like, see Haney too, like, starting to gas out. Not to say he was gassed out, because, you know, this fight probably goes really different way if he is actually gassed out. But you could clearly see like he's starting to gas out. Lomachenko, he like in that round 11 especially too. Like it kind of seemed for a moment there like Loma had his entire way with Haney, and like he could knock his lights out. With whenever like as if whatever opportunity presents itself, like that could be it. But obviously Haney stayed in, and that's all. You're kind of just like seeing. I really don't want to call it a trend, but you're kind of just seeing like the epidemic of like, these guys like clearly they have to get these finishes, or else like it's like it doesn't matter what you do for 12 rounds, and even we've seen it in UFC too. Like doesn't
See,
matter
but in
what you
MMA
do.
though, it's more like I was saying this to somebody today. It's like more incompetence in MMA. In boxing, it's almost like it's like not choreographed, because it's definitely not like rigged to that extent. But like,
Yeah, dude, it's just
how do you even justify that? And I mentioned the Romero Barroso thing. Like that's even worse. Like
you would. It's just like you wouldn't think a fight as not a fight, a sport as legitimate as any combat sport, like, but boxing, especially we'll say in this instance, like, could have, like, such a freaking just, I don't even know the word to call, just, like, something so, it's silly, it's straight up, it's silly, because like I was saying before, like, even a casual fan could tell you, like, 116, 112 for Haney, like that seems a little off. Like I don't think the fight was that decisive in his favor. And I was texting when we were, me and you were going back and forth about it last night. Like I thought in my head too, like 115, 113 for Lomachenko seems like that's the right consensus scorecard, and while that's decisive, obviously like it's probably not decisive enough for It's interesting too, like because
we literally
boxing,
knew it.
I have
We knew
I
it was
have my
coming.
issues with UFC betting and DFS and all that as it is. Like I'll never gamble on boxing, like more than likely for as long as like because as long as you're seeing stuff like this, like it's impossible, and it's like. I really don't have a clue as to who I would think. Okay, Haney being the champion, like he's probably a slight favorite, and then obviously Loma just because credit to Haney too, like you're saying before, like he's giving his props and everything. Like I just beat a future Hall of Famer, like one way or another, you can't take that away from him. Like it's
Right.
That's it. It's written in the history books. Like it's official. The win goes to Haney, unanimous decision. Like Vasily Lomachenko, like that looks pretty damn good, obviously on your resume. So.
Boxing
Like,
is just such a hard sport to cover, like, because, we're obviously more oriented towards MMA, and we talk about, like, these bigger boxing fights, but when you're covering boxing every week, like, when I listen to Teddy Atlas and guys like that, they're talking about fights from, like, the 90s, 2000s, and it's, like, the same thing as this. It's, like, it makes it so difficult to talk about a fight. You're like, oh, well, this guy beat this guy by unanimous decision, but if you watch the fight, it was actually judged really poorly. So, like, the record books and what actually happened are two different things. And how can you cover a sport like hardcore when it's so hard to like read between the lines? Because you have to be watching every second to really get an idea of who's really winning a fight. Because if you're just looking at the scorecards on Wikipedia, like if I saw one like Devin Haney won by unanimous decision with those scorecards without watching, I would think, okay, well, Haney's outboxed a lot of his previous opponents, so that's probably what happened. But, like, when you watch the fight, it's crazy. Cause like I said, 115, 113, I could live with that. But 116, 112, I don't know how you get there. And then, that, like I said, that same guy scored round 10 for Devin Haney, Dave Moretti. And the worst part about this is that these commissions, they never have to answer to anybody about this. Like, they're paid by taxpayers. Like, they're a government body. Like, that's what they are. Like, that's why it's the Nevada State Athletic Commission. And, like, no comment from anybody about these things, and same thing with the Romero Barroso thing. The ref didn't comment, and NSAC doesn't comment, and everybody's just sitting here debating what the hell's going on with boxing.
Yeah.
Like this is,
we have to.
it shoots itself in the foot.
Comment though.
Yeah,
It's
man.
like, dude, like.
And
exactly. If we don't comment, then who is? Nobody is, because they're not the people that are actually there doing this don't have to say anything. So
it's such
you gotta
a
call
tough.
them out, man.
It's tough because it's like, what can you really do besides
Exactly.
what we're doing?
They back the fans like us into like this corner, and it's like, dude, like we're just trying to talk just great fights, We're trying to talk
which this was, by the way. This was an awesome fight, and the fact
We're
that the
trying to talk.
scorecards were
Zach,
like
we're
this.
trying to talk one of the greatest champions of our time, like in Devin Haney right now, and then going up against this, like putting his zero on the line too, with like
He's the
again
legend
exactly
in Loma.
like it's got everything boxing needs written all over it.
And we're sitting
And
here
then-
talking about a fucking scorecard. That's crazy to me. And I do want to get into the fight a little bit too, but it sucks because this is what's killing the sport effectively. Because we want to talk about how awesome this fight was, but you can't look past some of these scorecards sometimes. Like this one, we're gonna say it again: 116-112. I'd love to know how anybody could give 8 rounds of that fight to Devin Haney, and that doesn't even mean he didn't do good because Haney fought his ass off. So did Loma, but at the same time, what's right is right. Like in 8 rounds, man, I just don't know about that. Like I respect both guys, but dude, I just can't get past that one. It's just tough. And like I said, I saw Loma, that video of him in the locker room just crying afterwards. Like these guys are training their asses off, putting everything on the line in the ring, and it's dangerous in the ring. That's for sure. We've seen enough people get critically injured and die in boxing. Like the fact that he basically, you could argue that he won that fight, and one of those judges just completely dropped the ball on it. Like you wonder if it's just total incompetence or it's like something more than that. And either way, that's not good. And somebody needs to answer for that. And I just don't know how that happens besides people talking about it more. I know Teddy Atlas was saying last week after the Barroso thing, he was like, write to your congressman. He's like, tell him this is unacceptable. I'm like, he sounds like he's going crazy. Like it sounds like he's crazy when he says that, but he's right. Like what more can you do?
Truly cares, man. Like come on.
Like I said, it's tough to cover the sport when you see things like this because on the one hand, like a guy like that, he's been training dudes for like decades, and he loves the sport. But like you want to get more people into it, and yet you have to explain week after week after week how these things happen.
Oh
like,
my god, dude, that must be so exhausting. On top of dude,
along with the politics of it too, like with people who won't fight each other, different promotions, this and that. Like
it really is a cycle. It really is a cycle. It's crazy.
I don't know. I don't think it'll ever kill the sport. Like I truly do believe that a big boxing match when it's there will always be like the biggest spectacle in sports. But these things are gonna keep it alienates casual fans and it alienates hardcore fans. It's like you love a sport, you want to see the right guy win. So I compared it to baseball yesterday. I was watching the Yankees versus the Reds, and the Yankees won in the 10th inning, 7-4. And I was like, imagine if the Yankees won the game 7-4. You watched it, you're like, okay, yeah, the Yankees won that. And then the MLB comes out. It's like, well, actually, the person who judged the game, they gave it to the Reds. That's what boxing is sometimes. Like you just see a guy get it done, and I'm not saying that this one's the worst example of that because, like I said, this is a really close fight. I think robbery is towing the line, but that one scorecard is just ridiculous at this point.
Man. Well, I think that's kind of where, if you remember, I forget for which fight it was in particular, but if you remember our whole talk about damage versus control time in UFC and MMA, and how do you even really, obviously you have the significant strikes stat, and then it's, at the end of the day, how do you even really quantify a significant strike or a strike at all? What are these judges truly looking for when it comes to damage? It's and it's just, okay, there wasn't really any blood in this fight, so okay, I guess there's that, but it doesn't take a genius to just watch all 12 rounds of this fight and just
at the bare minimum know that Haney didn't win 8 of those rounds.
Give what we're trying to obviously do right now, and just give props for awesome fight, really enjoyed that, but I
wish we didn't have to keep having these conversations. I wish we could just talk about how awesome this fight was, and we don't have to explain to people that boxing has the craziest commissions and scoring.
And then once again, if you wanted to say the first 6 rounds too, okay, we're too close to call for one. So it's all right, so let's say this was a 6-round fight. So then, that's excusing the judges there, in which they probably still give it to Haney in that sense. So it's so you add 6 more rounds to the fight, and in which case you get a clear winner in Vasily Lomachenko. Like, it's clear. It's just that simple. Like, plain and simple. And you still give it to Haney. Not only do you give it to Haney, but you made it unanimously, as well as just a completely skewed card of one of these judges with the 116, 112. And it really does make you just wonder, man. It really just does, because we'll never know. We'll never know.
I doubt that this will ever be something that changes, just because it would be such a huge thing to try and uncover it. Like, if there is some sort of, like, more, like, I guess, corrupt thing happening in the sport. Because, like, it's hard to go out and accuse anybody of anything when there's literally zero proof.
Yeah, man.
But when you see this time after time again for the past few decades, you just wonder, like, what is going on here and why does it need to keep happening? Like, but like I said, when it's a government thing, they're never going to be held accountable. Like, that's all things with the government. And that's, when it comes to sports, it's no different, because you think about it, the world, there's so many bigger problems. Nobody's going to try and
almighty dollar.
Yeah. Like nobody's going to try and fix boxing. You know what I mean? Like, there's other things that we need to fix in this world. Like, there's world hunger, there's homelessness. The boxing scorecards are not something that politicians need to really worry about. But at the same time, that's the only thing that will ever change this. So that's why I kind of have no faith that it's ever going to change, because it just takes too much. So, but let's talk a little bit about the fight itself, because I don't want to take away from these guys, because Devin Haney's a dog for taking this fight. He talked about it leading up, saying how he doesn't like how a lot of boxers nowadays don't want to risk their undefeated record, and he did that in this one against a former champion like Loma and a legend. And this was a war. I mean, for all intents and purposes, I enjoyed watching this fight so much. I thought Haney, for a decent part of the fight, especially early, was doing good at fighting off the back foot. Like, I thought he adapted fairly well, but Lomachenko, his footwork is just elite, and he was just just causing him problems with the combinations. And I think that he's by far the best guy that Haney's fought. And I think Haney proved that he is that guy that is deserving of, like, the praise that he gets. And Lomachenko proved that he's not done yet. And, I mean, you could argue that he should have been the champion after this one. So, I don't know. I don't want to go too much more into the scorecards, because I think we've exhausted that one. But like I said, you can't blame Devin Haney for that, like, whether you disagree with it or not. He didn't score the fight. He fought his ass off. He did his job, and he got the win. So that's the result. Like you said, it's in the books, and that's how it'll always be. And he gave Loma his props. It's not like he was being a jerk about it. But then afterwards, we had some talk about Shakur Stevenson possibly being next for Devin Haney. And that's a fight I would love to see. Shakur Stevenson, New Jersey native. Love to see that. And I think that the lightweight division is in a good spot right now. I think, like, with guys like Haney, Tank Davis, Shakur Stevenson, Loma, even if, like, Ryan Garcia ever decides to come back down, there's a lot of big names right now in boxing at that division, and in that division, and it seems like those guys aren't too afraid to fight each other. But I don't know. Like I said, I wish there was more that we could get into with the fight itself, rather than just having to talk about these scorecards. But when you see some things like that, it's hard to ignore, and you have to, like, we tell it as it is. You know what I mean? I don't like that. I don't like when I see a guy, in Lomachenko, at least do enough to, like, warrant a draw. I thought Max Holloway. I was about to say Max Holloway. Max Kellerman brought up a good point when he said that you could argue that the fight was super close and that Lomachenko just won the story of the fight, and that's fair, because he did win a lot of the later rounds, and that makes for a good story. Former champion, underdog coming in, comes back and wins this fight, but he didn't win it, and that's just what it is at the end of the day. But Devin Haney, man, he's for real. I don't think anybody can take that away from him, even if you disagree with the decision. It was a close fight, no matter who you gave it to. But we didn't talk about the UFC today. There wasn't really too much from that. I mean, Mackenzie Dern had a great win, and the card itself had some good moments, but not much that we were really trying to talk too much about, especially after this big boxing match and all that came with it. So we'll be back next week. Let's see what the card is actually. I don't even know like what next weekend is. I was so wrapped up, dude, on that boxing match that I haven't had like any chance to look. Ooh, it looks like we have like actually a tiny bit off. Yeah, because there's the next card it says on ESPN is June 3rd, Kai Kara France versus Amir Albazi. I like that at the Apex. I don't mind that. And then after is Nunes versus Aldana, which is quite. I'm not going to talk. We'll talk about it more when it comes.
Yeah.
But we'll save that. But I don't know. We hope you guys got something out of this video. Let us know in the comments what you guys thought about Haney versus Lomachenko, your scorecards, or even just your thoughts on judging and boxing in general. And we'll try our best to take a look at them and see what you guys think. But thanks for watching. Subscribe, and we'll see y'all.